Well, for more on EU-Russia relations, let's bring in Yascha Mounk, a PhD candidate at Harvard University's Government Department. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Now, with Germany being one of the galvanizing voices for EU sanctions against Russia following the annexation of Crimea, where does the relationship stand between Russia and the EU?
Well, it's a very bad relationship because Vladimir Putin does very bad things. There is some difference between EU member states. So Germany has been pretty clear over the last years under Angela Merkel's leadership about how unacceptable Russia's actions in the Ukraine, but also its behavior, for example, in the UN regarding Syria is. There are some countries like Italy that both rely more on Russian gas and have sort of long had deeper ties to Russia, who have been trying to push the European Union away from sanctions against Russia. But I think all observers have been a little surprised by how much political will there was to really keep those sanctions up in the last years. And the reason is that at every turn, when some of the more critical voices about the sanctions started to gain the upper hand, Vladimir Putin did something that was pretty extreme, and it ended up bringing EU member states in line.
Now, this is something that does affect both sides. So what's been the downside for both the EU and the Russian economies as a result of the differences that they're having over Crimea and Syria?
So the trading relationship is not equal. It ends up harming the Russian economy much more than it harms the European economy. And so this is one of the reasons, I think, why in the long run the European Union has been able to keep those sanctions up. And we've seen the Russian economy, which has deep problems, being very reliant on the price of gas. So as the price of gas and oil has been relatively low over the last years, it's really been a hit to the Russian economy. But in the long run, the Russian economy desperately needs to modernize, needs to actually invest in people, invest in ideas, rather than being a huge petrol state, essentially. And the sanctions are really making it difficult for Russia to do that. So this is hurting Russia much more than it's hurting the rest of the European Union.
Now, the world is certainly watching. So how is the strained relationship with the EU affecting Russia's other alliances, for example, with China?
Well, I think it is obviously giving Russia an incentive to align itself more closely, not just with China, but with real sort of rogue states around the world. So we see that Russia at this point, in part just to prove its sort of international relevance, is going all in on Syria, is helping Bashar al-Assad stay in power at huge humanitarian costs. We see Russia also sidling up to regimes in Iran and beyond. So this is a cost of this situation. But ultimately, Vladimir Putin has a decision to make. He can be reintegrated into larger political structures. He can have his sanctions dropped if he doesn't try to annex sovereign territory in the Ukraine,
right,
and if he is cooperating with the international community in coming to some kind of solution in Syria.
Now, we did see that Russia recently saw some growth for the first time in 2 years with its economy. So how is the economy faring overall there?
Well, so I think in the short term, it really depends on the price of gas and oil. And as the price of gas has sort of inched back up a little bit over the course of the last year or two, it has helped the Russian economy. But really the deepest issue here is one of long-term development. In order for the Russian economy to do well, it would have to spend a lot more money on education, and it would have to create rule of law so that people who invest their money in Russia know that whether they're going to make money depends on the business model and not on the connections to the Kremlin. At the moment, it is the latter, and that's making innovative companies that aren't extractive, that don't just rely on basic resources and their exploitation, very reluctant to go into Russia.
Now, we know that sanctions are due to expire this summer. We also have the G20 meeting coming up in July. Where does the EU-Russia relationship go from here?
So, you know, prediction is always hard. Over the last year's time and again, people predicted, you know what, this next renewal is going to be difficult. Actually, the political will is going to go away. But with the ongoing behavior by Russia and with the frosty relationships we've seen even today, right? So Angela Merkel went to Sochi. She met Vladimir Putin, which is right. It's good to engage him. But she made it very clear. She was very careful in the press conference to telegraph the degree to which the disagreements are deep and ongoing. So Angela Merkel will certainly want to renew sanctions as long as Emmanuel Macron wins in the second round of the French elections next Sunday. He is going to want to renew the sanctions. So I would predict, with the knowledge that prediction is always hard, that they are going to get renewed.
All right, well, thank you so much, Yascha Mounk, a PhD candidate at Harvard University's Government Department.
Thank you so much.